Bright lights.
We good, Lisa? Awesome. The mics sound like they're working. So good afternoon. Welcome back from lunch, everyone. Kicking off the afternoon, my name is John Sherrington. I've worked in the renewable fuels industry with Renewable Energy Group on Chevron for the last 18 years. I actually retired from Chevron REG in August of 2025. I'm currently on faculty in the business college at Iowa State University and doing some consulting in this renewable fuel space. Thanks to Lisa and Monty to inviting me to moderate this panel today. So the panel this afternoon is going to discuss opportunities for building new markets for renewable fuels, both in the U.S. And around the world. So first to my left, we have Zoltan Szabo, Secretary General of the Climate Ethanol Alliance. Zoltan worked as a sustainability advisor for the last decade, focused on reconciling climate, energy, agricultural, transport, and environmental policies worldwide. He may also have traveled the furthest from anybody to be here. You'll hear from his accent. He's Hungarian. So Zoltan, thanks for being here. To my far right, we have Charlotte Lawler, Director of Sustainable Aviation Fuel and Emissions at Delta Airlines. Charlotte is a member of the airline's Global Sustainability Leadership Team and has over 15 years of experience in renewable energy and clean tech. And then to my immediate right is Josh Gerritsen, Director of Renewable Fuels and Corporate Strategy at John Deere. Josh's 23-year career has spanned diverse roles in finance, manufacturing, and corporate development. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage. So we've got 45 minutes. We're going to start off with each of our guests giving a 2 to 3 minute introduction of themselves and the organization. I think Zoltan has actually 2 or 3 slides, so I'm going to start with him. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So it's great to be here. And let me just introduce the Climate Ethanol Alliance, because this is a US crowd, and I know some of you in the room, but we are a global organization. We have been around for 8 years. It has been an informal collaboration, but 2 years ago we decided to formalize the alliance and have it registered. It is registered in Europe, and we have a mission. And our mission is to get the perception on ethanol right. I'm from Europe, and Europe is an outlier on biofuels. The rest of the world is moving forward. Some are faster, some are slower, but moving forward. Hopefully you guys will get E15 soon. But Europe is just like often makes 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards, and most of the ideology comes from Europe, such as the food versus fuel. So that's our first mission, just to, I often term it revisit ethanol. We've got more than a decade, nearly 2 decades of real-world experience, and that shows, that contradicts the food versus fuel false dichotomy. So we are not only represent producers, but we have input suppliers and service providers in our ranks. Next slide, please. Our founding member is the RFA from the US and Pannonia Bio, one of the largest producers in Europe, and we have a range of supporting members. So that's where we are, given the fact that we were just registered 2 years ago. I'm pretty optimistic about the prospect, and there is a clear need for a single voice in the global arena, and that's what we offer. Next slide, please. So as I said, our first priority is revisit the image of ethanol. We are quite active on high-octane fuels, E20 and E30. Standardization should take place, and also we are very active on carbon removal. Some of our members are championing this technology. I will not talk about those today because we just do not have time, but I will focus on the fourth priority, which is maritime. And I'm pretty excited to share the latest developments with you guys. And so the Climate Ethanol Alliance has a consultative status at the International Maritime Organization, IMO, and we are the only voice representing ethanol in maritime circles. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Zoltan. And pardon the pun, we'll do a little bit deeper dive on some of the maritime market development opportunities over the course of the next 35 minutes or so.
Sure.
Charlotte, let's hear from you next.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the Renewable Fuels Association. So I'm Charlotte Lawler. I am the Director of Sustainable Aviation Fuel and Emissions at Delta. What that means changes every single day depending on who's in Washington and if we're talking about local or federal policy. But ultimately what my team's ambition is to do is really to help scale our use of sustainable fuels on a global basis in a way that makes sense for business. The way that we think about sustainability at Delta is in 3 different pillars. So we think about the way that we fly. So it's how we fly, it's operational efficiencies, things like speed, weight, and measures on board. We also think about things like recycling and onboard products within that pillar. We also consider the aircraft, so what we fly. That's where you start to hear things like revolutionary fleet, electric airplanes, and a lot of things that are for the future. And then the third pillar is really where I focus, which is the fuel that we fly with. And that's really where we're focused on what can we do today to increase our use of renewable fuels in a way that is attainable and feasible. And I think we all know that electric aircraft is not here yet. And so until that point, we're really excited about sustainable aviation fuel as one of the mechanisms that we can use.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlotte. Josh, I'll let you go next. I actually had a chance to meet Josh and see him on the main stage at the Clean Fuel Alliance of America conference in Orlando a couple of weeks ago, talking about all things B30. But yeah, Josh, tell us a bit about your role and what John Deere is up to in the renewable space.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think a few people in this room probably have an idea who John Deere is. Hopefully you also had a chance to see the booth that we have, and Buddy working in the booth out there, probably one of the most passionate people of biofuels that I know. And we're here talking about solutions that our company is focused on, ethanol, biodiesel, as John talked about. And it goes beyond that. It goes into really the why does it matter for us, and there's different reasons, I think, for different organizations of why biofuels matter. But at the end of the day, Monty's done a lot of good things. I sat in this audience a year ago, and I listened to Monty talk and really lay the foundation out, and I'm guessing he's done it before because that was my first experience. But really recognizing the implication, the tie, the connection between the renewable fuel industry and the farming industry, right? And the value here is, as Monty laid out even this morning, is we've really been stagnant in renewable fuels growth for quite a while, yet the farm gate continues to produce ever more with its ability to do, we're taking technology every day and applying it to the farm and just seeing the ingenuity come and the great output. And what we need to do is we just need to keep working on that path to grow the renewable fuel industry. And so over the last year, Deere has been a lot more visible in this space. My role has really been created to help work with folks on the stage, all of you. How can Deere as a brand in this iconic industry really help progress this conversation forward? You've all been doing it for a long time. We want to do more to help. We can do more to help, and we're trying to figure those things out. And one of the things that we've been thinking about is really making sure that there's a good understanding and connection point. And I think from time to time it's worked well, and this is a time where we're going to need it to work well, where we bring the entire industry together to recognize how something like passing E15, which we're highly supportive of, not only is going to help a corn farmer in Iowa, but it's going to help a rice farmer in the Delta, or a cotton farmer in the South, or a sugar beet farmer in the North, right? Like, the ability to be able to move that renewable fuel demand is going to help prices across the farm industry. And that's one of the reasons why we're so adamant in the work that we're doing, including the products that we work on day in and day out.
Great. Thanks, Josh. So I've got 2 or 3 questions for each of you. I think we'll go in the same order, so we just kind of get a process going, and then we'll take questions of the audience. So please submit those via the iPad opportunity. I've got the iPad here on my lap. But Zoltan, let me start with you. When you're talking in objectives, that 4th objective was all about low carbon marine opportunities. So how big is the marine opportunity in the renewable space, and why do you think we should be leaning in on marine? We talked quite a bit about this at dinner last night.
Yeah, I mean, we had an hour discussion on this topic yesterday. So, I mean, I just love this question, and I have a simple answer. The opportunity is just massive. And let me repeat it, massive. So I do not want to turn it into a competition, which opportunity is bigger, E15 or maritime, but I could. And maritime, so ethanol is produced to the tune of 100 million tons a year. I apologize, I'm thinking in tonnage, not gallons, but someone can translate. And the maritime sector uses 300 million tons a year. So it's more than 3 times the size of the total global ethanol production a year. And yeah, so it's just massive, and the reason I'm here, I accepted this invitation, is that, and I will talk about it, that the opportunity probably is until October, because there will be a vote in IMO in October. Last October, there was supposed to be a vote to get the so-called net zero framework. This is a global regulatory framework on maritime. It was in the making for nearly 10 years. And the vote was supposed to be a shoo-in last October. But politically, it didn't turn out that way, and it got postponed to this October. So this vote will be decisive. And this is an ethanol and biodiesel crowd. I represent ethanol, and ethanol would fare. I mean, this is not only a low carbon fuel, but it is inexpensive. So it would beat bunker fuels by a mile, and also biodiesel would also fare well under the net zero framework, under the global regulatory framework. So the reason I'm here is just talk about this opportunity, and I see it slipping away, and the reason is the U.S. opposition. So the U.S. was supportive until last fall, and it just changed its position, and right now it is against it. So we have, in my mind, we have only one task, is just to turn this opposition into at least a neutral position, but a supportive position would be even better.
No, thank you. And I think in gallons, in the last 4 years when I was at Chevron, I spent a lot of time in the marine fuel market. So I'll convert this to Iowa math for you, the 100 million metric tons. It's about 100 billion gallon a year global marine fuel market. That's fossil fuels today. It's primarily marine gas oil, LSFO, and HSFO. And just for comparison's sake, the entire United States diesel fuel market is 70 billion gallons. So it is a massive opportunity. And we'll dive a little deeper into the IMO here in the next round of questions. Charlotte, let me pivot to you. Can you just share with the audience a bit where Delta is at on its sustainable aviation fuel journey? Because obviously it's a journey, and it's going to take time.
It is. So comparing numbers, the global demand for aviation fuel is about 100 million gallons, of which 4 of those are Deltas. We are one of the largest airlines in the world by size, but we're definitely the largest airline in the world by revenue. So beyond the domestic market, we are very connected, and our mission is to connect the world. So the number one thing that we don't want to do is to fly less. So when we look at the global landscape, there's a lot of mandate around emissions reductions, the use of sustainable fuels, and the only alternative is to either comply or fly less. And so we're in a position where we, rather than being reactive to those mandates, we are more ahead of that supply chain. We're trying to operate further upstream and be involved in the development to do so in a way that is good for business, that does not automatically just increase the cost of travel or the ability to travel for the passenger, in a way that enables our goals, but in a way that's smart and pragmatic. You know, it's really easy for somebody in Europe, I'm looking at Zoltan here as a European, but it's really easy to set a standard and say, by 2030, you have to use 10% SAF. The reality is, if that supply isn't available because the market hasn't scaled with it, it's impossible to comply, and then the only thing you have are penalties. And so we've done a lot of work to really be involved with the producers, with the global legislators, both in Europe and in Asia, where there are mandates present, to ensure that they're realistic. You know, beyond that, we are one of the largest consumers of sustainable aviation fuel globally, but in 2025, the total pool of SAF was maybe 3 to 5% of the total jet fuel demand. So we're looking at, you know, 3 to 5 billion gallons in a 100 million gallon world. So there's a lot of demand out there. I know Monty talked about demand earlier. There is definitely a big opportunity in aviation for this, but we just have to scale the technology in order to meet that demand.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Josh, you did a really nice job of telling us why John Deere is committed to biofuels. Had a chance to stop by and chat with some of your people and visit your booth this morning, and saw the E98 banner. Spent a little bit of time online looking at this morning. That was a new development to me. Tell us a bit more about the E98 initiative within John Deere.
Yeah, you mentioned the banner. Actually, one of my favorite things on that banner, it says homegrown horsepower. You know, I think that's really a testament to the things that is going on in conferences like this and biofuels. The E98 conversation was really just built on, I mean, really there's a sustainability component to it, right? We were talking about how can we move forward on sustainability, help customers meet sustainability goals as they think about circularity. But then it really morphed into a recognition that says, look, we can probably do a couple things with an E98 strategy. One, we can give farmers a tractor that allows them to take a load of corn in to the ethanol plant, which they're already doing, and then pull probably just a little bit over half of their fuel back from that one load of corn, right? And be able to use that right back on their farm at a very economical solution. So it became really attractive and something that we really wanted to continue to explore, and we're still exploring. On the banner it says prototype for a reason. We are still very early days in working through this development. We've got a lot of opportunity in front of us on the technology side and in working with growers to understand really the value proposition and how this can all come together. Frankly, it's the first time John Deere's always said, like, hey, what's the fuel that's available, and we'll use it, right? We've been doing this for 110 years of tractor development. This is the first time we're saying, hey, there's a different fuel that's not really available, but let's try to get it out into the farm gate at E98. So there's a lot of things that have to go with that. The second part of why this is an interesting story is, you know, certainly as much about the tractor on the farm, but it's the reinforcement of what the tractor on the farm can signify, right? You think about the size of that tractor and the work that it can do, and then you hear people talk about, gosh, I don't know if I want to put E10 or E15 in my car. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, if it can do that, I think you're going to be okay, right? And being able to reinforce that message with folks, I think we've got this two opportunities that we need to continue to move forward with on the E98 tractor.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Zoltan, let me come back to you in the marine market. So we're in a very landlocked state here in Iowa, and I don't think many people are probably familiar with what IMO, the International Maritime Organization, is, or the policy that was potentially going to be implemented. The vote got kicked on down the road a few months ago. Can you just briefly describe what the IMO is, what your alliance, what opportunities do you have to influence policy there, and then if IMO, I'll call it IMO 2026 at this point, is passed as currently written, what opportunities does that create for the renewable fuel sector? I know that was a lot, but
Yeah.
you can handle it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, so ethanol is a commodity, so it's transported, it's sold on the global market, so it doesn't really matter where it is produced. It's a commodity market, and the lowest cost producer with the best attribute, in this case the carbon intensity, wins on the market. So ethanol is actually traded, I mean, exported, imported, so millions of tons. The infrastructure is already there. It's just everyday business. You've got ports, the port infrastructure is in place, so whether the ethanol is actually produced in Iowa or in Brazil or Europe, Canada, wherever, it doesn't really matter for this perspective, because all it needed is just to get to a port, and ports are everywhere. And these ships are big. They consume a lot of fuel. Each ship consumes a lot of fuel, and if they just like loaded, bunkered, say in Houston, they can, if it's a liner or container ship, it can return to Houston and just like you maybe fill its tank along the road in Singapore, maybe it doesn't even need to. So all you need is just make sure that you produce ethanol with the right spec. And let me just come back to the IMO global regulatory framework, because the methodology is not yet finalized. We are involved in the methodological discussion, and last week I submitted a proposal on the safety of ships, because actually like ethanol and methanol are considered the same product in maritime circles. We all know that ethanol is non-toxic, methanol is toxic, so why would we need to have these same safety requirements when just like ethanol is like you can treat it as a bunker fuel. Methanol needs additional safeguards. So the maritime circles are pretty different, but one thing is similar, is that all the participants admit that shipping will need to be decarbonized. Just like aviation, it's not really a topic of discussion. Everyone accepts that. All the shippers are fine with that. As long as there is a level playing field, they are actually supportive of the IMO framework, the net zero framework. All the major shippers, we talk to all of them, and they just want to have a stable regulatory environment. They have invested in their ships, they will invest in upcoming technologies. They just do not mind, because the increase in the cost will be marginal. It just will be passed on to the consumers. All they want is just to secure their competitive position, and they can do that. And one thing to be mentioned is that ethanol hasn't been discussed up to a year ago in maritime. No, nothing. Biodiesel, yes. Biodiesel has been around, used in shipping, but ethanol was just like completely ignored. So but what we see is that over the past year, partly due to our activities, is that shippers and other actors realize just, yeah, what's this fuel? It has been around. It is scalable, it's available, it's low carbon, and it's inexpensive. That's all we need. So major shippers started testing ethanol actually on waters, and it will be, I'm sure that by the end of the year, by the middle of the year, this technological question whether ethanol can be used in ships will be sorted out and put to test forever. And then all we need is the regulatory framework adopted with the financial incentives in place.
Great. No, thank you. No, that was a lot. We'll come back to a couple of those. Charlie, actually, one of the questions I got from the audience is one of the things we talked about in advance, people wanting a little more information about what you're doing up in Minneapolis, up in Minnesota.
Awesome. It's actually one of my favorite projects. So In Minnesota, we stood up something called the Minnesota SAF Hub. And within the hub, we work with Greater MSP, which is the local economic development office. We, of course, Delta as your airline. We then work across the value chain with different components, right? So it's Ecolab, Bank of America, Excel Energy, Deloitte, McKinsey. The slide has a lot of logos on it. It's basically the end consumer who's going to support the cost of that fuel. We also have ag in the house. So we have corn, soy, the foresters as well, and the actual developers or producers. And the reason why we have everybody at the table is because in order to build and scale SAF in Minnesota, it has to be done in a way that makes sense for everybody at that table. Starting with policy, the legislation in place in Minnesota, Monty alluded to it earlier, it's one that it's just much more straightforward than maybe some of the models we've seen in markets like California. That can actually drive value for the local economy. Not to rip on California too much, but what we saw in California was that the two parties that most benefited in the early years of the RFS were a Finnish national oil company. I used to work for them, I would know. And then also the Malaysian UCO producers, right? So it was really an economy that was built on tax dollars that were designed to incentivize the use of sustainable fuels, but a lot of the beneficiaries were not benefiting the local economy. And so it's something that we really were intentional about in Minnesota. It is a tax incentive for the blending or production in state. And so the ambition there is to help drive local, whether it's capital development through facilities, job creation through those same facilities, an outlet for the feedstocks in state. So we have a lot of corn and we have a lot of trees in Minnesota. We also have soy, right? And so how do you build SAF in a way that benefits all of the local stakeholders is really important to us. We're starting with the blending facility that is currently under development, and we do expect to have SAF running through Minneapolis Airport by early Q2. So it's going to be a very big milestone for us, a big demonstrator. But after that, we're looking at local blending, local production, and ultimately the goal would be that there's enough production that we can actually export it. So you're building value in state, and then you're sending it over to the mandate markets wherever there's surplus, like in Europe, where there's a high premium for that product, again, to drive value for the local economy.
Great, thank you. Josh, I mentioned this a bit earlier that you were at CFA in Orlando a couple of weeks ago and talking about some of the B30 initiatives with John Deere. You want to give some of the highlights of what you shared with us a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, certainly. The piece about B30 is maybe a little bit of a stretch. We were sitting here talking about new markets, and we think about maritime, and I'm not sure how long that's been really worked on, but it's not going to get solved tomorrow, or SAF isn't going to get solved tomorrow. We got a lot of work to do to figure out an E98 tractor, right? So that's not going to be out tomorrow. But something like B30 is maybe a little bit more near term, something that we can be working towards. B20 is in markets in different places. B30 was one where we said, well, hey, there's a way what we can do here is push the industry forward a little bit more maybe than what some might be comfortable with. So certainly working with CFAA and others to really understand, all right, what's the challenges? What do we need to be working on? We made an announcement from the work that we did to get, once we got comfortable, and said B30 is workable in our Tier 4 engines. And we did the announcement at Farm Progress last year, and we said, well, okay, that's great, but the last time we told people you could use B20 was when we brought out Tier 4 engines, and we had to go back and look that up, and well, it was 2012. Jeez, like, why hasn't the market moved since 2012 on this topic, right? And you know this from your prior days. And so we said, we can't just say that we approved it and then just like, hey, great, let's celebrate and move on. We got to go do something about it. Yep. And so that's the thing that we're working on this year is how can we work with industry partners and find people that are willing to say like, hey, maybe I'm doing actually B20 today, or maybe I don't have any biodiesel. What do I need to do to go to B30? And from our perspective, we know that equipment will run it, right? Because we understand that when on the higher blend levels, you've got some challenges with some of the after treatment on Tier 4, so you can kind of go to a certain level, and before that you can go higher, but you've got to make sure it's not just the tractor or the combine or the crawler in the construction space. It's it's really making sure that your system is ready for it. And so we want to work through that.
On-farm storage of diesel fuel in the wintertime.
Absolutely.
Was something we struggled with for years.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. We also, we saw this 20 plus years ago when we brought out high pressure common rail. You're going to have a different expectation of how that fuel tank can work and hold things, right? And biodiesel is going to interact with that diesel tank differently. So we want to make sure that we are setting people up for success, showing what's possible. We know that, years ago there was challenges in the industry, but that's really behind us, and we want to go back and break those myths of what the biodiesel industry has been able to do over the last decade or more, and be able to showcase, hey, this is really something that can be valuable, and work with producers to make it happen.
Great, thanks. Zoltan, let's come back to the marine market, and we talked a bit about IMO 2026, and if that gets passed as written, the opportunity, I think it's not just for ethanol, but it's for biodiesel, renewable diesel, probably RNG, LNG, lots of renewable fuel components, and that would be global legislation. In the United States, what does the U.S. need to do to help make marine ethanol or just advances in marine renewable fuels a reality? What can we do?
Yeah, so I think that's the most important question. That's why I'm here. Yeah, so I believe that U.S. administration was just listening to the wrong guys, wrong advice, because the IMO deal would be in the interest of the domestic industry. So the U.S. ethanol and biodiesel sector would benefit immensely. Why? Because the regulatory framework has basically just like, put it simply, based on carbon intensity. And the U.S. ethanol has a low carbon intensity, and it is inexpensive. So obviously the best product would supply the marine market, and the best product currently in terms of cost and quality is U.S. ethanol. It beats, there are two components, the cost of the fuel and the cost of compliance. And given these two, the U.S. industry beats all other jurisdictions for the moment. So I believe the U.S. position is just based on misunderstanding. This is not acknowledged, this is not recognized, and let me just put it this way. So it's not only the U.S. ethanol industry that would benefit from the IMO deal, but the biodiesel industry, a whole new market opening up. The biomethane industry would also, bio-LNG, and the LNG sector, which is strong in the U.S., would also not fare badly because they are, I mean, if you disregard methane slippage, then its carbon intensity is way lower than traditional bunker fuels, and it is just cheap. So actually, the thing is that it shouldn't be viewed as a climate deal. In fact, it is a trade deal, and your presidents love trade deals, and it's in the interest of the domestic industry. So I think this is the message, and the opportunity is here. You guys, all you need to do is just make sure that this message gets across, because right now the administration believes that the IMO deal would be bad for the domestic industry.
No, thank you. I think, and we talked a bit about this last night as well, I think the other thing specifically the U.S. can do, so if you look at the 100 billion gallon global fuel market, the U.S. is about 7 or 8% of that, sort of 7 or 8 billion gallons. And today, biodiesel, renewable diesel, you cannot generate a RIN on ocean-going vessels. So Clean Fuels Alliance of America and others have been advocating in Congress the ability to generate RINs on ocean-going vessels, and that would immediately make the price of biodiesel, renewable diesel, much more competitive with marine gas oil and LSFO. Obviously, for ethanol, we would need similar type legislation. So I think that's another immediate opportunity. Charlotte, let me come back to you. So similar type questions. What do you think as the industry and the SAF evolves? What can the U.S. do to support this emerging sector?
Yeah, I'm actually going to echo what Zoltan said earlier about just stability and regulation. I think it's really important that regardless of partisanship, if we could just acknowledge this is a bipartisan supported movement. It creates value, whether it's carbon reduction. I know that that's a stronger maybe value driver for the left, or whether it's sustainability, lowercase sustainability in the future economy of the local farmer and of the local construction. It's good for both, but ultimately what it is, it creates energy dominance, energy resilience, and energy independence in a world where competitiveness is critical, right? If we don't have policies that support the development of the space, we will get stuck paying higher mandate fees, higher import fees if we're having to import some of this product, and we're gonna get left behind because we're not developing the industry ourselves. So I think it would be really critical if we just moved forward with a stable policy that enabled the scale and the development and the investment that's so required for the U.S. renewable fuels development.
Great, thanks. Couple questions from the audience. So, Josh, I'll start with you, and I'm going to read it verbatim. I don't necessarily agree with the sentiment, so but you'll see when I read the question. So the question, as stated, is John Deere hasn't always been supportive of ethanol, which I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think you'll agree with as well. But I think the gist of the question is what's changed and why are they committed to ethanol now for the long term? I think around your E98 technology.
Yeah, I'd be curious of the origins of the concern. Deere has been a very strong supporter of ethanol from a policy perspective since really from the 2002 Farm Bill, where it was really talked about as a need and a pathway to help the farm gate. And we've advocated for it in DC for 25 years. So I think there's that piece. If we flash back a long ways, I suppose we could say, well, hey, you used to have gasoline engines in some of your tractors, and in theory those could run some ethanol, and that's true. But at this point, from our perspective, ethanol is an interesting pathway that, again, we looked at this a long time ago when we had gasoline engines. Many of you were familiar with the old John Deere tractor, right? And there's pros and cons with it, and diesel just became a much more efficient engine, and that's what we put in and really help power farmers and contractors for decades. But as technology has evolved, and the availability of the fuel has become more prominent, and the need to find more markets is more prominent, that's really where it says, hey, this becomes something of strong interest to us, and we're pretty sure we can do it. And you can see in the video that's on the table out there, we have a tractor that's running on ethanol. It's possible. And we do want to make sure, like we talk about E98, we're pretty purposeful in the 98. This isn't, we're going out and getting E85 from the local retailer. This is really just pulling ethanol really from the ethanol plant and saying, let's use this stuff because it's applicable at the farm gate. And so whether it's a customer that's going to eventually say, hey, look, ethanol's for me, or a customer that says, I want to use higher blends of biomass-based diesel, or in some markets, there'll be some interest in smaller markets for electrification, or hey, regular diesel works for me. Great, right? We want to make sure that we have the solutions, but we want to make sure those solutions exist.
Perfect. So we got about 3 minutes left. There's one specific technical question I've got that I'm going to have you answer, Zoltan, then I'll give you each 45 seconds to kind of wrap up with any summary statement that you want to make. But there was a question, so for IMO, wouldn't the marine industry have to change out its engines to run on ethanol? I think you've got a pretty quick answer to that. Go ahead, Zoltan.
Yes, so ethanol would fit so-called dual fuel engines.
Yeah.
They are designed for dual, meaning like bunker fuel, and the other one is methanol in this case. So these dual fuel engines are on the water. There are 450 either already on the waters or in the order books. And these are big ships again, so it's a large fuel need. And all they need is a slight recalibration to accommodate for the usage of ethanol.
And each of those 500 ships on the order book, they can use 35 to 40 million gallons of fuel annually. So big opportunity already.
Yeah, so that, I mean, if all of them are turned into ethanol, it would be like, I mean, US ethanol capacity would need to be doubled. So it's just large.
Charlotte, I'll go to you first. Summary comments?
I'm going to quote Monty Shaw, sustainability has to be good for business. And there is a lot of good for business. It's a smart business decision to enable the development of renewable fuels. And Iowa's a great place to do it. You've got a lot of feedstock and some really good potential.
Great. Josh?
Farmers are fueling the future, right? I think we're all saying that up here, right? This is the opportunity, and there's plenty of feedstock available. So I really appreciate that comment. We've got to continue to change minds with folks on let's put this stuff to work, and we're happy to be part of that mission.
Zoltan?
Yeah, so, I mean, feel free to reach out to us. We are quite active on maritime. That's why we launched this marine ethanol platform. I've got like a flyer here. And we work with shippers, OEMs, and ethanol producers just to make this opportunity a reality.
Great, thanks. Thanks to the panel. Just a summary from my behalf. So we talked about a 100 billion gallon aviation fuel market, a 100 billion gallon marine fuel market, and a whole new agricultural market for E98 and B30. That's a huge untapped market opportunity. The aviation and marine is less than 1% market penetration of renewables, and exciting. There's opportunities, I think, for ethanol, methanol, renewable natural gas, biodiesel, and renewable diesel. So thanks again for the panel. I thought we had a really good discussion. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.